Hello and welcome to the Manitowoc Ice Training Center. My name is Tanner. I work here in the training center as of past few months, so you might not have seen me before. So hopefully you see a little bit more of me. Today we're going over the USE0050 service limits and what they mean, how to diagnose them. So let's get started. So just before we get into the actual information, just a reminder, there is a monthly spotlight quiz at the end of this. So if you want to test out your knowledge, things that you learned, go ahead, check that out. There is a URL and a QR code that you can look. So get us started. Service limit information. So a service limit is there to stop the ice machine when proper conditions arise, making sure that when it's stopped, we can actually go in and service the issue. Now the service LED is on the far right of your user interface, just next to the button. You'll see a LED. So that LED will flash 1 to 5 times, indicating what service limit we are off on. So for example, 2 flashes, that means service limit 2. So if you go up to the machine, you don't see the light flashing, what you can do is press that service button, and that light will flash the most recent service limit that was occurred. Another way to do that is also by just turning the machine back on. That will also flash the service limit. So for our first service limit, it is a long freeze cycle. So this occurs if the max time limit for a freeze, particularly freeze 2, has been reached, which is around 60 minutes. Now that has to happen 3 consecutive times, then the machine will shut down on this service limit 1. There's a handful of possibilities, whether it's refrigeration, harvest float, electrical problems. We'll get into that right here. The first one you can look for is whether or not the evaporator is getting spray, proper spray. So you can go ahead, open up that front door, open up the little damper in there and take a peek when it's in freeze. Is there water being shoot at the evaporator? If not, let's check power at the water pump and then go from there. Water pump's getting power, no water's getting sprayed, check out that water pump, right? So let's say there is a little bit of water, but not as much as there should be, or maybe it's just bubbling over. Double check that that ice tray is not overlapping on that spray bar. Make sure that that water cone is a good, decent cone that's spread across the evaporator nice and evenly. So that's one. Our next possibility is that our water inlet is stuck open. Now open means water is going through that water inlet into the water trough and possibly overflowing that water trough. So the way we sense whether or not we need to go into harvest is a harvest float. So if that float always has water, it's not going to actually initiate a harvest. So we want to make sure that any water that is going to our inlet is stopped when it needs to, and double check that the water pressure going to that water inlet is about 80. I believe our min is 20 PSI, and then our maximum is 80 PSI. So if that's anywhere over that, that could cause some issues going through the water inlet there. Now, speaking of those harvest floats, it's another way that this machine can go off on a long freeze. So the harvest float tells the machine to go into harvest, to initiate that harvest sequence. So if our float is stuck open or has malfunctioned open, or the harvest float is dirty, it's not allowing that float to fall all the way to the bottom, it won't go into a harvest. So if it is clean, looks clean, let's go ahead and ohm that out. In our picture, you can kind of see how to do it there. Just go up and down with it. Make sure you'll see when it is open, you get an OL, and then closed, you'll have a circuit there. And then if the float is dirty, let's double check that as well. What we can do to clean that is this. Now, obviously, if we're going to clean, we want to do the entire clean sequence. So if you're cleaning the floats, you might as well clean the machine while you're at it, right? But to properly clean these, what you can do is mix up a little bit of water, a little bit of descaler, and have them sit in there for a good amount of time, and then take a nylon brush, gently, scrub them. Don't go too crazy. They're not made of metal. So And then once they're cleaned, go ahead and reinstall and then double check that they are in working order. And then if you do want the cleaning procedures, they are found on page 24 of the tech handbook. Now we've gone through those. We're going to get to the refrigeration issues. Now, again, I want to stress, try going through the non-refrigeration diagnosis before you get to this step, just because those steps are a little easier to go through than when you get to the refrigeration. So what we have here is a freeze cycle analysis chart. You can use this chart by making X in the horizontal columns, and then depending on how many X's you have in the vertical columns, and depending on how many X's you have in the horizontal columns, it'll give you a decent idea of a diagnosis all the way on the right there. And then to go with that freeze cycle analysis chart is a temperature chart. And then when you're taking temperatures, so let's say the suction line, discharge line, make sure that's 4 inches within of the compressor. And then for the harvest inlet, make sure that's also 4 inches in there. Now, all these charts can also be found in the USE0050 Tech Handbook. To go with that, just a few things to look at. A low charge possibility. You can see both suction and discharge line temps are going to be lower than normal in freeze and in harvest. So that could be a possible leak. So make sure you find it, repair it, and go from there. And then also a harvest valve leaking past. The inlet and the harvest valve will be the same temperature as the outlet of the harvest valve. And you'll wait till about 8 minutes to actually check in between those two lines. So again, if you're unable to diagnose with the temperatures, then at that point, you have good reason to pierce the system, add pressure gauges, and then refer to some of the pressure charts inside the tech handbook as far as operational pressures. So that was service limit 1. Service limit 2, long harvest cycle. So if the max time limit for a harvest has been reached, which is about 7 minutes, for 3 consecutive cycles, the machine shuts down, and then that LED will flash 2 times. Handful of possibilities here. You can have issues with the bin switch, dirty evaporator, refrigeration and then electrical problems, and the ice machine isn't level. So a dirty evaporator. What we can do for that, you can always stick your hand up in there, feel around. Is there any kind of scale, any kind of chipping going on? You can double check with that. Also double check the last time the machine was cleaned, right? We recommend that the machine is cleaned at least 6 months, and that's a detailed clean. So again, you can check in your tech handbook for the procedures for that. So it always helps just to get a nice flashlight up there and double check what it looks like. So the ice machine isn't level. So you get yourself a nice long 3-foot level, put it on the top, and double check how level that machine is. To be able to change that level, you can use the feet on the bottom. They screw in and out. That will help you adjust the level. So you want to check the front, and you want to check with the side as well. Now we check level because if that evaporator is uneven or crooked in any way, the cube is going to be trying to fall out at a wrong direction when it could just be nice and straight and fall nice and smoothly. Next, we could be having is bin switch problems. So our bin switch reads whether or not a cube has fallen. So when a cube falls off the evaporator, that knocks open that curtain and slams back shut. That indicates that ice has started to fall, right? And then it gives enough time for the rest of the ice to fall. So what we want to do is double check to make sure that that magnet and that bin switch are connecting properly. So you can take the lid off, get an eye on the control board. As you can see, we have a picture there of the bin switch light. When that damper is closed, that bin switch light should be on. When it props open, that bin switch light will turn off. So that's one way that we can kind of diagnose whether or not that bin switch is actually reading. And then also, same as the floats, you can go ahead and ohm out that bin switch. Next is a possible refrigeration problem. So what we can do is check at our harvest solenoid and see if it's getting power. Check and see if it's getting voltage at the harvest. If it's getting voltage, if it's not getting voltage, then you have an issue there. But if it is getting power, if power is present, you should be able to hear a slight hiss and or you can again check temperatures on the inlet and the outlet. So those temperatures should be similar, if not close to the same, right? If they're not, you have a possibility of your hot gas valve is restricted or is completely shut. And again, if you're unable to diagnose with the temperatures and the temperature charts that we were given, go ahead and pierce the system, add gauges, and go from there. And there's charts inside the tech handbook that you can refer to as well. Service limit 3, we have a water loss or no water. So this will happen if the high and the low level switches do not open within the 4-minute pre-chill. This will shut down the unit for about 30 minutes, and then after that 30 minutes, it will restart if the same issues occur. And then after 100 restarts, the machine will flash the service limit 3. So those floats are looking for that water to fill up enough that it raises both of those floats to then initiate into the freeze. So some possible issues that we could see with that is there's no water supplied to the ice machine, or the filter is plugged, or the water inlet isn't opening. So first, super simple, make sure you have water to the ice machine. If you ain't got water to the ice machine, you're not going to make any ice. It's just impossible, right? And then another thing to check, do you have enough water pressure? Like I said before, our minimum is 20 PSI and our maximum is 80. So you're looking for at least 20, somewhere in the middle there would be good. And then maybe if you can't find anything, just double check for any kind of blockage in the water line as well. Next is the water inlet and the dump valve. Might have issues there. First, with the water inlet, as I said before, it is possible that it has failed. So we want to double check that we have power to the water inlet. If we got power, then we can take apart that water inlet, see if there's any kind of blockage in there, anything like that, see if it's plugged, and rebuild if there is issues in there. Another thing to check, maybe you are getting water, but it doesn't seem like it's filling up. Check the dump valve, make sure it's not stuck open. If it's stuck open, it's just going right back down the drain. And obviously, once you're running in water and it's going straight out, you're not going to actually fill up that trough. And then last, we can double check our filter. When was it placed last? And things like that. It is just possible your filter is just too old, needs to be replaced, and that's why there's a restriction in your water line there. So double check that as well. Service limit number 4. So this is for the condensate pump. This is a condensate pump fault. If the float switch inside the condensate is open, or the jumper wire on the back side, the harness to the ice machine, is not in place or not connected, this is what will cause a service limit 4. So obviously you got to make sure you actually have the water pump. If you don't, you won't see this, but you just want to double check that connection on the back side is properly connected. And then also you can check the actual drain line going from the condensate pump is clogged or restricted and things like that. Service limit 5. So for the service limit 5 is for a full bin fault. Well, this will happen when power is supplied to the ice machine, but has remained off for 48 hours on a full bin. So full bin meaning you have enough ice to satisfy that bin thermistor inside the bin. Now it is looking for 48 hours of that. Now obviously by 48 hours you should have your ice melted past that point. So things we want to check, is the water curtain in place properly? Sometimes when we take it out, we go to clean it, we don't put it in properly, so it's maybe crooked or just fell into the bin. Possibly the magnet on that curtain has fallen out or is broken off, and or even the bin switch is faulty as well. That's something that we can check. And then the bin thermistor is also faulty. Those are just things that we can double check to make sure a diagnosis for that. So that was this month's spotlight. Our next few we have for May is Indigo and Indigo Next control board LEDs. And then in June is the Neo and Coolair control board LEDs. We're going to be jumping into the meaning of the lights on the boards, a little more in depth on those for both Indigo, Neo, and Coolair. And obviously we have plenty of ideas, plenty of videos to go through, but we do these videos for you. So if you have ideas, use the QR code, use the URL. I have it posted in the description below that you can click on. If you have ideas, please go there, put them in. We'd be happy to make a video for questions that you might have. And then also, if you're interested in the factory training school, the level 3 factory training school, go ahead, check out the website for dates and things like that. You might be seeing me there. And then lastly, here is our quiz. You can go ahead, use the URL that's there, use the QR code, or use the URL that I'll post in the description as well. You can just click on it and go from there. You can do this on your phone or on the computer as well. So I appreciate you guys' time. If you're interested, go ahead, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. It helps us know that we're doing all right. And we'll see you in the next one.